meant to do this a month and a half ago. There was a whole big announcement that we had to do back then, but whatever. Sorry about any background noise. I got a full house. Carling's got a fridge behind him. But hey there, folks. Welcome back to LGBTerror. And just like your college case of oral herpes, we never do disappear for long. Today we're gonna fuck around and talk about Freddy vs. Jason in a mostly unscripted format. But before we get around to doing that, I have a promotion to do and I have an artist to thank. On the promotional side of things, God, Alice, I am so sorry. I meant to do this months ago when you first contacted us, but within the last couple months, we had a lovely listener contact us over Instagram. Her name is Alice McKay. I'm going to be providing a link to her Instagram in the description below. She is a very accomplished 16-year-old transgender filmmaker. Carling, I hear your stomach growling.
Oh, shit.
Based in Australia. And she recently completed shooting her first feature-length film, which is, as she describes it, a queer vampire drag queen film, which sounds pretty fucking awesome. She's also done work co-writing, directing, and producing Tooth for Tooth, 4, like the number, which has received impressive critical acclaim. This girl's done more with her life in 16 years than I've done in a little bit over 20, and she deserves a lot of recognition for that. I believe the film that Miss McKay currently has in post-production is called So Vam, like So Glam. So I recommend giving her Instagram a follow because there's a lot more information on her projects over there. You know, tuning into her work, getting excited with us as we look forward to everything that she creates in the years to come. You know, keep up the killer work, Alice. We'd love to hear from you again. And what with the thanking, I know we already did this on Instagram too, but we just want to toss out another thank you to Maddie, who is Hey Chikinan, I don't fucking know, on Instagram, who drew us a fucking phenomenal piece of fan art that we're probably going to be using as a channel banner, if that's alright. You can find that over on our Instagram too, and a link to both our Instagram and Maddie's will be in the description below as well. They are a fantastically talented artist and a very sweet person, so if you're listening to us right now, please give them a follow. They deserve it.
I love Maddie.
I love Maddie! All that aside, we want to talk about Freddy vs. Jason, specifically in regards to its treatment of black and female characters, as well as the homoerotic text and subtext between its titular villains. This will be, emphasis on the tits. But this will be a critical analysis, and that will be covering some things that we definitely did not appreciate in this film, and we will be praising this movie. Because for all of its faults, it's fucking Freddy vs. Jason. It kicks ass. It's entertaining as hell when the beasts are on screen, and we do genuinely enjoy this bloody mess of a movie. By no means is it sophisticated or even particularly respectful with a lot of the subject matter it handles, but it's fun, and you can always use more blood and more fun.
Oh yeah.
So Carling, sorry, my king, I know I've been talking for a long fucking time.
Oh no, it's okay.
I want to hear some of your thoughts on this movie's treatment of women, specifically our main girls, Gib, Kia, Lori, and from there, maybe we can focus on Kia as a black protagonist and the unnecessary vilification of her trying to conform to white beauty standards. That's another stomach growl. And maybe talk a little about the sibling-like bond between Jason and Lori and how it's contrasted with Freddy's really fucking creepy treatment of her. I have my own thoughts on that, but I've been talking long enough, and I'm sure we all want to hear your voice for a while instead.
Yeah, hopefully we can hear my voice and not my stomach. I'm just going to be honest with the audience. I was really excited to record this morning, so I kind of just jumped on the mic. I didn't eat anything, so next time I'm going to be sure to get a little bite to eat before I get on.
Just start crunching pretzels right into the microphone.
Yeah, so hopefully my stomach's not going to do that a lot.
No, it's all right. It's the shtick of the podcast. If it's not a dog, it's a gut.
Yeah, there's always going to be something growling in the background. I'm going to talk a little bit about just my stance on the movie really quick before I get into the characters. It's tying into what you said. This is one of those movies, and I think we have a number of those, where we know it's very flawed and very imperfect. But for a lot of horror fans, this was an introduction to horror, because when it came out, there was so much hype around it, and a lot of us, in our generation at least, we were young kids. We were in like grade school, if not even further back than that in certain cases. And it's really... But, like, as you get older, you start watching other horror films, you start noticing all the problems with it, especially once you go back and you watch the other Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street and see what those are like. But you can't really hate it just as a piece of your past, I guess, or at least that's how I feel about it. Like, I remember being like 13 years old and finding it on YouTube back when, you know, people could cut movies up into little bits and pieces and you could watch them like that. I don't know if anybody...
I miss that.
Yeah, you remember that?
I miss the Daily Motion sort of style of old YouTube where you could watch a whole cartoon in like 3-minute intervals.
Yes, oh my god, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that was my experience with this movie, so it's just been part of my life for so long. And I remember for when I was 15, I had friends over at my Halloween party, and we watched that, and everyone was like screaming, and like this movie is a really good bonding experience to watch with your friends, I think, whether or not you're a horror fan, because you will inevitably choose a side between Freddy and Jason, and by the time they're fighting, you're going to be like yelling at your TV and rooting for one of them to rip the other guy's arms off and shit.
I have a group of gays that I hang out with, Lindsay, my love, who I hope that you're listening out there somewhere, and Jordan, my other love. Genuinely, I hung out with them, we got really high, and Lindsay hates horror movies, but we were sitting down, and I turned on Freddy vs. Jason. We all had a fuck ton of fun with that, just totally blasted. I think we were eating like a whole bag of chili Doritos. It was fucking awesome. So that's the experience that you kind of think back on when you watch this movie, is either you're a little kid watching it and you're not supposed to be, or you're like a grown-ass man and with a bunch of other grown-ass adults and you're just smoking a doobie over it. But it's got that energy.
Yeah, I remember we had to do it digitally just because of where we all are on the globe. I remember last spring, you and me and a big group of our friends also, we were sitting down and we were watching it. And we'll get into the specifics of this later. But I remember by the end of the movie, everyone was just screaming for Freddy's blood. It was hilarious.
I mean, by the way, Carling's in Canada and I'm in Florida, so we're on completely opposite ends. I know some people think that we're like roommates. No, that's why these episodes are spaced so far apart, is because it's difficult to coordinate schedules when we're not around each other. But today was a good day, so. Yeah,
and hopefully we can record more of these soon, because Grendel and I have some really exciting ideas that maybe we'll get into at the end of the episode, maybe we won't. Spawn! Oh my god. Right. Let's not talk about that right now. We're not going to be able to shut up about it.
This isn't the Spawn episode.
Oh yeah. But we might do a couple of those, but...
Well, yes. We can talk about Gibbs' shitty boyfriend first.
Oh yeah. Good starting point.
Jason seemed to recognize, like, the abuse that he was putting Gibb through. And you know, I know that there's a sort of canonical, it's debatably canonical, the notion that Jason's father, Elias Voorhees?
Elias, yeah, like your lizard.
Elias. Yeah, like my lizard who's right next to me. If you hear skittering, that's him. I know that there's a debatable piece of canon where Jason's father was very abusive to Jason, but either way, Jason suffered a lot of abuse in his life. I'm sure that regardless of the type of it, he could recognize, you know, what that was. He left Gibb alone, even though she was objectively in the more vulnerable
She was
position.
In the same room, yeah.
Yeah, she was in the shower. He could have easily gotten her, but he didn't. He went after her boyfriend and killed him in probably the most brutal way possible, and that was the opening to this movie. So I immediately knew I was gonna like it.
Oh yeah, and Jason he wasn't just killing him. He was like angry. Like,
oh, it was brutal. It was like I want to see you suffer while you die, and it's like,
you
damn,
guys got.
Shit.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, dude.
No, I just keep making expletives. It's alright.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening to this are familiar with the character Jason Voorhees, but on the off chance you're not, because you know everyone's different. Jason is not a sadistic killer. That is Freddy's thing. Jason will chop your fucking head off and he'll leave you alone. Sometimes he'll get more creative, but that's not usually his shtick. So to see him doing that is like, oh shit.
Yeah, because like Freddy's the one who I think Freddy and Michael both. You could make an argument that they enjoy what they're doing, or at least they're fascinated by it. You know, Jason has a sort of curiosity with death, but it's very surface level, and he doesn't really seem to understand a lot of the time the gravity of what he's doing unless he's pissed. Like, there were a couple instances, I think it was Friday the 13th, Part 7, the one that was the Carrie ripoff.
Oh, yeah, the Kane Hodder introduction. I fucking love that one. Gotta watch it again sometime.
Whatever one Kane Hodder was first in, where there's that horrible, abusive fucking psychotherapist or whatever he is, that was straight up gaslighting that girl into, like, thinking that she was fucking crazy and making her mother think she was crazy or whatever. I don't even remember, if I'm honest, what his intentions were. But I do know that Jason comes at him with a fucking electrical saw, and it was awesome. But you don't see him, like, relish in it a lot. But with that guy, he was watching his guts spill out, and then he folded the bed over him, and he did the little head tilt, I think, and he was like, yeah, you deserve that shit. And I'm like, damn, you got some morals in you, alright. Yeah. Which we know he does. We know he has some morals. And that's just like...
That's important because Jason's morals end up becoming, like, a big highlight and a big, like, driving force of the movie's plot. And I know there are some horror fans who are like, oh, I don't like how much they softened Jason. And, I understand that in some regards.
Other movies softened him too, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason Takes Manhattan, for as much of a clusterfuck as that movie was, that was a very soft movie on his character.
Exactly, and... when I say I can understand where some people are coming from, we can get into the water phobia thing and how they handle that later. I get why people were pissed about that. I
didn't like that very much either.
No, that was frustrating, actually.
I think if you were going to give Jason a phobia of drowning or water coming over him from the top and you explained it that way, I would understand why he was scared of being submerged, like forcibly submerged, not by choice. But just saying that it was just water in general, I'm like, that don't make no sense, though.
Exactly, because we see him, like, hiding in water in other Friday the 13th. So that I understand people being pissed about, but just his actual characterization, I thought that he was fine, and I'm really glad we got this movie because this was a defining movie for a lot of Jason fans. Like, this was some people's first introduction to him, like it was mine, and it definitely shaped how I viewed his character going forward. I don't want to forget about Gib, though, because we're going to be talking a lot about Freddy and Jason. Catherine Isabel! Oh, Catherine Isabel is one of my favorite actresses. And she... Okay. I do, in fact, have a crush on her, and I probably always will.
Who doesn't?
Oh, she's the best.
Who doesn't?
Oh, my God. And I loved her in this movie. I thought she was hysterical. She basically plays, like, the party girl type, but she really humanizes her, like, as much as she's able to in, like, her limited screen time. Like Gren said, like, this girl clearly has, like, an abusive relationship going on, and it really does affect her, and she's dealing with, like, alcoholism, or at the very least, she's drinking to, like, cope with her problems. And I ended up feeling pretty bad for her, and I wish they, like, actually explored these issues more. Because Catherine's a really good actress, and she's still a big name in the horror community, and she was a really big name at the time, because she was, like, fresh off of Ginger Snaps, and that was, like, a big deal. So, to, like, have her and Robert Englund in the same movie together, and to, like, barely interact, and they don't even exchange, like, quips with each other, even though we know Catherine would have nailed that. Like, she's very...
Oh, she would have delivered them.
Yeah, she's very good at playing the snarky types. And they didn't really deliver in that regard, and every time I watch the movie, I kind of feel like we lost something there.
It really seems to be a theme in this movie, just like a recurring thing that happens, is that they really humanize a character, or they really start to get somewhere with the commentary over a character, whether it's racial commentary, it's commentary on, like, you know, feminism, it's queer commentary, doesn't matter. They get into, like, minority commentative space, and they almost say something good, and then they kill off the character horribly. And that's the part of this movie that really pisses me off, is it's just like, man, you almost had it, but they refuse to devote themselves to saying anything with this movie, and instead turned it into, like, this, you know, gravitas show of blood and guts and glory.
And titties,
you know,
yeah.
And titties and dicks flying around everywhere. Which, you know, fine, I get it. It's a horror movie. It's Freddy vs. Jason.
It was also a staple of its time.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be what we know today, and it wouldn't be, you know, such an indicator of, oh shit, sorry.
Good burp.
Vomited in my mouth. Delicious. But it wouldn't be a staple of its time, you know, the 2000s, if it wasn't the way that it was. It's just, you know, if I were to redo it personally, I would lean into some of that commentary more, because there was room for it in this movie, but they didn't dedicate themselves.
Exactly, and a big problem Before I get back to Gib and her character, a big problem that people have with this movie, and I totally understand, is that they complain the human characters are very shallow. And I could totally understand that, because I remember there were numerous times where Gren and I were watching this together. We understand this movie, and we'll look at each other and we'll be like, what the fuck are they even talking about right now?
Yeah, what are they fucking saying? It just comes so fast, and they use the human characters, I think, too much as a vessel for a plot, when honestly the plot should have laid on the back of the beast and not, with these guys driving it. They should not have been driving it as much as they were, because if you're gonna have the human characters do that, you at least have to, also devote yourself to making them likable and watchable, which, again, they almost did. They almost got there.
You had some good actors in there.
Yeah, at points, you really wanted to like them, but you just couldn't fully get into it because they would take away those endearing moments. They would take away those humanizing qualities, and immediately cut to something else, and it really sucked.
They also use the characters a lot for exposition, these human characters, and the thing is,
oh my god.
Oh
Why did they just tell the story?
Literally, they would never let you just figure it out for yourself. They spoon-fed
They just assumed their audience was stupid. So in a way, the movie's really condescending.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, did they have the characters do that because it was a big blockbuster movie? So did they assume a bunch of randos were coming to see it? And
probably.
That would explain it. But you could do that in a more elegant way. I understand it's a schlocky horror movie, but Jesus Christ.
I always learned in writing classes, I studied writing professionally for 4 years, by the way, which, makes the way that I speak make no sense. But, ooh, nice growl. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah, it's still happening, guys.
But, alright, so, yeah, I studied writing for 4 years, and the most important thing they taught me is not to assume that your audience is a bunch of dumbasses. If you treat them like they're intelligent people, you will attract intelligent, introspective people generally to your work. You'll always get some assholes who flunked out of English class, who think that they know what they're talking about, and they're like, I think symbolism means nothing, actually. Those false intellectual types, you're always gonna get them. But it doesn't matter what you're writing, it doesn't matter what you're putting out there. Don't talk to people like they're fucking 3. That's rude, and people aren't gonna watch your shit.
Exactly. And when people hear these human characters talking like that, they're going to start resenting them because they're the mouthpieces of that. And, I love Freddy. I think Robert Englund delivered every line perfectly, as he always does. But even Freddy's used his exposition at certain points.
Yeah, the fucking beginning of that movie.
It's kind of iconic, though, now.
It is iconic. Okay, the beginning I can forgive the expository bullshit, because you kind of need it for something like this. I think it would have been way cooler to show it in some way, at least to show some of it instead of just telling it. But I do like the close-up on his bloodshot eyes, and it's such an iconic image, him just being like, I'm very naughty. I'm like, when did you turn into this thing? I like you. You're better now.
I like that, oh god, I gotta get back on the subject, but I like that we kind of hear Freddy telling his side of the story. I think that was really fun, because he's never really gotten to do that before until now.
I wonder why.
Probably
Maybe it's because he's obnoxious.
Yeah, no one wants to listen to him talk. I don't really like the character, but I'll always laugh when I think about how he was rambling on in part 5 and Alice goes, God, shut the fuck up! And she shoves
Ew, gross Freddy.
Gross. But I gotta get back to talking about Gib, though. And I wanted to discuss, and this is a bit of a touchy subject, but this is too important to just skip over it. They use sexual violence as a vehicle in this movie way too much. It didn't. None of it had to be there.
Even when it didn't make any sense, which it never seemed to. And I'm not an advocate for censorship of dark topics. I obviously don't think that things that are portrayed as fetishistic or romantic or idealized in some way, I don't think taking those topics and putting them out there like that should be encouraged. I think if you do something like that, you should be prepared for people to backlash you and bite your head off, because you kind of deserve it at that point. At some point you have to admit that you're not exploring those topics and you're just fucking debauched. But I do think that, discussing things like rape, exploring things like sexual violence and harassment and the more unpleasant aspects of the human existence, I guess, I think that's important. I think we need to not skip over that shit, because if we pretend that it doesn't happen, then people are gonna feel like they can't talk about it when it happens to them. But this movie, like we said, is not tasteful at all, and it happens especially with Gib. There's just this weird fucking scene where she's passed out in a cornfield and some dude starts groping on her, and she's almost punished for it. Like, there was no reason to use that scene to kill her off, and to be fair, if I'm looking at it from a character perspective, I don't think Jason's idea was to kill her. I think it was to kill the guy on top of her, and he just doesn't know his own strength.
He was also really upset seeing that.
Yeah. For obvious reasons, because we know from, like, Jason Takes Manhattan and other things, sexual violence really upsets Jason. And he punishes those people really severely. So I don't think that he meant to kill Gib, but I think from a writing perspective, you know, out of character, out of the whole narrative, behind that drawing board, there was no real necessity to either have that scene or have that be the scene where she dies. It's just like, man, can we not, like, punish the chick for the sexual violence going on against her? Like, I know that that's not what it was meant to be, but it's how it comes across. It's like, man, that really was a shitty decision. It
was really harsh. And tying back to what I was saying earlier about, like, how they could have had, you know, Catherine Isabel and Robert Englund banter back and forth. Another thing, and it makes sense to tie these things together. I think Freddy only gets one kill in the movie. So why didn't you just let him deal with Gib? If she had to die.
Freddy fucking gets one kill in this movie.
Funny. It's funny. Pathetic.
He's so fucking pathetic next to Jason. He's like, oh, this whole plot is me proving how much of a big fucking man I am and how worthless Jason is, and Freddy can't do shit.
Yeah, it is funny. It is very funny, but it's like, from like a writing standpoint and like having these two very talented actors on a screen together, why couldn't you just have Jason take care of the rapist, and then if you had to kill her, why not have her like put up a fight against Freddy and have them like banter back and forth with each other?
Yeah, what the fuck? At least give her, like, some kind of exit from this movie that would give her some dignity. It stripped her. I think my problem with it is that it stripped her, both in the real world and in the dream world, of all of her dignity and all of her autonomy. It just completely took it away and made her like a blubbering mess, and that was nothing like how she was as a personality type in the beginning of this movie. It failed to write her as a human, and it failed to give her any kind of, like, standoffishness. It failed to give her any kind of self-defense and when it really mattered, which I just don't like that. I'm not saying that every girl in a movie needs to be a final girl. Not every girl needs to be a girl boss. And yes, women can die in horror movies, fine. But it really did not deliver on writing her as just a whole rounded person.
Yeah, I just feel like they wasted that character, and they wasted a very talented actress that they had to portray her. I will say, I feel like more moving into Laurie, who's a character I do have a soft spot for, even though I know a lot of horror fans don't like her, and I can understand why, and I'll get into that too. I feel like The actress.
Yeah. It's the actress.
I'm sorry, Monica Keena. I know you tried.
Monica really did her best, but she was just... You know what? At the end of the movie, she was really good.
Oh,
I think the problem really was that they tried too hard to make her, like, a sexy love interest girl. And her character, again, just like Gibbs, had a lot more potential than that.
Exactly. There's a Freddy vs. Jason novelization, and I haven't finished it. But I was able to listen to an audio, like half of the audiobook I listened to last spring, and I'll finish it eventually. And I remember listening to it and being really just pleasantly surprised by the amount of depth that her character had, and the way that they probably wanted her to come across. Like, I really liked Laurie because she was clearly a very sweet and very compassionate person. Like, I feel like, I don't know if any of you guys have listened to our Nightmare Part 4 and 5. We talked a lot about why the character of Alice didn't work for us and what we thought they were probably trying to do with her and didn't pull off. I feel like that's this sweet, quiet girl thing. I know a lot of people are going to probably get really up in arms about this. I bought it more with Laurie than I did with Alice, that she was that type of person, and that really endeared me to her. I thought she was very compassionate, and she had a lot of empathy in her.
There were pieces of media surrounding this universe, like the novelizations, that did a very good job of humanizing these characters in a way that the movie just didn't. I would say the thing that does it worse than the movie is probably the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comics.
Oh my god.
There was nothing about those that I couldn't do it. The only scene in those comics that I liked at all, and I'm not going to get into them. I don't even think we should talk about them on this fucking podcast.
There's
really,
nothing to say about it other than they're gratuitous and disgusting, honestly.
It just completely undermines everything we know about these characters and their relationships to each other in just the worst, most offensive way possible.
God.
It's like, well, okay. But yeah, the only part of that I liked was when Jason cut that guy into fucking cheese grater pieces with a shopping cart. That was pretty cool.
That was cool. And I liked the banter between Freddy. Well, Freddy was bantering, Jason was listening. They had some good bantering moments on Freddy's end every now and then. Yeah, they were.
They had some cute moments.
Yeah. And then they decide, I'm not going to get into what they did to Freddy's character because I'm just going to get mad.
I'm not going to get into what they did to Maggie. What the fuck was that? I just want to ask somebody on that writing team, what the fuck was that?
I hope I never find them because I will actually start fighting them in real life.
That shit made me want to throw hands because that just wasn't right. Anyway, I think we've exhausted Gibbs' character. She's a wasted character. That's the point.
So I think we should talk more about Laurie and how she was treated, yeah.
Why with the Freddy and the constant sexual harassment? I know it's a shtick. I know to an extent that this is shtick. I get it. He's a fucking pervert. I understand this about Freddy Krueger. Alright, fine. I didn't need the whole scene of the hiking the dress up the thigh. I didn't need that.
What the fuck was that?
I don't think anybody needed that, and it didn't really feel fitting for him as a character because he's always been like, he holds a fear over your head. He dangles it. He kind of makes you think things are gonna happen, but the only thing he really ever delivers on is, sadism and brutality and murder. He's not a fucking rapist. I mean, I know we've established in our Nightmare on Elm Street analyses that we don't think Freddy was a child molester. He's not a fucking rapist, and comics and some movies have tried to implicate that, and it's like, but the point of him is just that he scares the shit out of you, and it doesn't make it okay, obviously. I'm not saying Freddy Krueger's a sweet little man. He's not.
He sucks. I love him. He sucks.
He's horrible. He will give you a rape threat, but he won't fight. He doesn't fucking... What the fuck was that? What the fuck was
Honestly,
that?
And it's like, God, I remember we had a really good discussion about this. I remember after we watched the movie, we watched it a couple times together last year, and I remember we had a really good conversation on the phone about the way that they framed like the attempted rape scene. It's very gross and creepy. It's almost like it's almost
fetishy, and it's like, man, it's not like Rob Zombie level of rape fetishism, by the way, but it's definitely like too romantic, if that makes a sense. Like, I don't want to say that what he was saying was romantic, because it wasn't, but it was clear sexual aggression, and it made her out to be like some shriveling, like, I whistled there, I'm so angry. It made her out to be like some squirming, whimpering damsel in distress, and he's like hiking up a pretty white wedding dress or something, and it's like, this isn't...
And they were like lingering on her legs and her tits.
Yeah, and I'm like, are you really gonna fucking sexualize her while this is happening? I mean, for real, are you gonna do that? We're just gonna go the whole mile with how bad this is, huh?
Exactly. And another thing that we talked about, and I don't want to get too much into it because I do want to get all my thoughts on Laurie out on, my metaphorical piece of paper. But I really felt like with Freddy's character, he is a bad fucking person. He's always been a really horrible person. I feel like they were just taking him way too far at certain points in this movie. I
wasn't a fan of the little girls with the eyes gouged out.
And the comment that was made about them.
I'm not really into that. I mean, I can commit to... I personally am a believer in the original script ideas that were tossed around where, the idea was that Freddy was framed, and we've talked about this pretty extensively, so I'm not going to get too into it, but, I can accept him as a child killer. I can accept him as a general serial killer. But that's what he's supposed to be. That's all he's supposed to be, is like a fear demon serial killer thing, and you don't need to drill it in how exactly disgusting and awful you think his character could be, because honestly, I know that at the time it was like, oh, let's see how many people we can offend. That'll get people coming into the theater seats. But it doesn't age well. It really just doesn't age well.
And it really hurt Freddy's reputation. I think, like, from a character standpoint, okay, because we've had conversations about this too. From a strictly character standpoint, I understand, and Robert himself has talked about this in interviews. I understand Freddy was getting really fucking desperate. Like, his power is, like, draining. He's, like, barely, like, clinging to life and shit. And it's making him even more of a cock than usual. I get that. But I don't know. I think there were other ways that they could have depicted him as being more vicious without bringing, like, sexual violence and shit into it and framing that sexual violence as, like, tittillating. That was just gross.
Yeah, I don't need that. It's me personally and a lot of other people personally for reasons I don't want to get into. I don't want to see that shit. I wouldn't have wanted to see it back then either. But, I'm moving more into her evolution as a person because I don't want this to be the rape scene podcast.
No, we've talked enough about that.
Yeah, though admittedly poorly written, the girls are the heart of this story. Many of the male characters are admittedly pretty forgettable besides, like, some jokes. Though I will again state that I believe this was more because of the writing and the pacing of this movie, not because of the actors. Again, Monica Keena, everybody likes to shit on Monica Keena. I understand. I get why. But I don't want to be like, oh, this movie was bad because of her and the other actors. It wasn't. Laurie and Kia, their friendship, from a writing standpoint, are exemplary. Laurie goes from this good girl abuse bait stereotype, as disgusting as that is, into a fire-slinging final girl, even though they were having her titties bounce all over the place while she did it. And while I think that they could have done with less of that titty bouncing, I liked that for her.
Yeah, from, like, a character standpoint, it was really cool. Like, it's really... I will say, I wish that they handled it differently, but it was very rewarding seeing that this poor girl has just been shit all over by everyone in this movie. Freddy's been shitting on her. She's been seeing her friends die. She doesn't understand who Jason is at first or what he wants.
Her dad sucks.
Her dad was a horrible person.
Sucks.
She's having, like, trouble. I didn't really like the Laurie and Will relationship, but she's having trouble with her boyfriend and shit. So to see her finally, like, put her foot down at the end and say, like, no, I've had fucking enough of this. And to have her, like, aid Jason and to have Jason aid her, I really like that. I know some people are really mad about Laurie's involvement at the end and how, like, Jason wasn't able to take Freddy down on his own, etc., etc. But
he was fucking cut to bits. The guy could use a little help sometimes, I think.
Exactly. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, people are getting mad at Laurie. They're like, "Oh, she was cowering behind Jason." Imagine you're like an...
No, she wasn't.
Like, okay.
No, she wasn't.
Not only that, but it's like, okay, here's the thing. I don't think she was cowering, but when you are an 18-year-old girl, and you have this, like, fucking behemoth, and you realize that he can help you, why the fuck would you fight Freddy Krueger by yourself? I'm sorry, if Nancy were in this situation and she saw Jason, I think she would have done the same thing and gone to him for help.
My absolute favorite thing is when people are like,
I would kill Freddy Krueger myself,
because it always reads to me like those fucking, like, because they hate her because of that, right? But it always reads to me like those fucking 12-year-olds on Fortnite servers that sit there and they're like,
if Freddy Fazbear was coming to me, I'd kick him in the balls. I'd just kick Freddy Fazbear in the balls. He wouldn't chop my head off.
And it's just like, you sound like a fucking child. You sound like you have something to prove. How small is your dick that you feel like you need to insult a fictional teenage girl because she saw a huge man with a fucking machete and she decided, maybe he's more capable than I am.
Literally, I'm sorry. That is a normal human reaction, and a lot of Laurie's reactions in this movie were very human reactions. I would have been crying and screaming my head off too.
Are people trying to act like they wouldn't hide behind the big man with a fucking machete? Are you gonna say that? Are you gonna pretend that? Because I think you're lying.
Yeah, and people get mad, oh, she's not Nancy Thompson. No, she's not Nancy Thompson. Nancy Thompson is her own character, and Laurie Campbell is her own character.
Why the fuck do you want the same character over and over again with the same strengths and weaknesses? If I wanted Nancy Thompson, Freddy vs. Jason, I'd rewrite Freddy vs. Jason with Nancy fucking Thompson in it. Go do that yourself, fuck's sake.
Exactly. And I'm trying to think of what else we can discuss about Laurie before we get into her relationship with Jason specifically, because that was one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I wish I touched more on that. Another example, I think, of Laurie just being a good and compassionate person, she's understandably very scared of Jason at first, and she doesn't understand what he wants or what's going on, But once she sees what happened to him, like once she gets inside Jason's head and she's in his dream with him and she sees him drowning as a child, her attitude towards him really, her attitude really shifts. Like, she tries to help him out of the water and everything.
Well, she was, forced by those circumstances to empathize with him. And I think that's a really important, notion to remember, is that she did not have the easiest childhood either, as indicated by her father's treatment of her. Whoa, Princess is scratching at my door.
Hello, Princess.
Anyway, yeah, I know that she didn't have the easiest childhood either, and while I'm sure it was nothing compared to his, it was still like, from one abused kid to another, you see that, and she couldn't help but view him as a person then, which it was very hard for the other characters to do, and was reasonably very hard for them to understand and listen to when she tried to tell them. But she held very fast to those ideals. She held very fast to her own morals there, and her own understanding of him as just a scared person like she was. And she treated him, at a point, almost like a brother, which was very, it was different. It was different to see him develop a bond with a character wherein he gives her special treatment because she demonstrated to him that she viewed him as equal to her. That was not something you see very often in a slasher film outside of a romantic context, and I don't think there was anything vaguely romantic about Laurie and Jason. I think it was genuinely just like human-to-human connection, which in a way is infinitely more special.
Yeah, it was very moving, and it's one of those things where things are happening so fast, like you barely process it the first time you're watching the movie because all these limbs are flying around and these two monsters are fighting each other, but when you go back and you watch it and you really analyze it, it's like, like this was very unique, and this was very special, and it was a really nice way of like developing both Jason's character and Laurie's character, and I think that makes her a very special final girl.
Yeah, I think she was a good final girl, not because she, was particularly tough or physically powerful or kicked any kind of ass or anything. She did at the end,
she had a good heart.
Reason. Yeah, within reason, but she was a very kind, compassionate person, and I would say if we wanted to compare her to Nancy Thompson, that's what they have most alike, is that they sincerely, their first instinct is to try and sympathize. Their first instinct is to try and humanize. And it's only when that stops being an option for them that they resort to violence, which, regardless of how good they are at resorting to violence, that really doesn't matter. The point is, their first instinctual reaction to these creatures is not to treat them like beasts, no matter how scared they are of them. And that is a quality, in a character that makes me admire them and get invested in them as a protagonist. And again, you can't really get fully invested in Laurie. I understand that. Not with what the movie gives you, not with what Monica Keena gave us. She tried. But the writing just was not good enough. It was not solid and well-rounded enough to get us fully invested in that character, and I get that. But what I do like about her, I like about her a lot.
Oh, hell yeah. And I will say this, I don't know if it's still up. I'm going to plug someone on YouTube who I'm kind of friendly with. We don't talk a lot. I believe his channel is called The Slasher Librarian. I'm very sorry if I said it wrong. We could maybe look him up after we're done recording and put him in the description. He uploads a lot of old, out-of-print slasher novels, and he'll read them, like novelizations of movies like Freddy vs. Jason. And, I'm hoping everything's still there. But if you guys
That guy's a real one. That guy's such a real one.
He really is. And if you guys are, interested in, original concepts in this movie, and if you guys, want a deeper look into Laurie's character and some of her friends, I strongly suggest going to his channel and looking up the Freddy vs. Jason audiobook. It's really good. Yeah. I was very surprised by how much I liked it.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to go back into this so abruptly, but... You know what else was really good with Laurie in Freddy vs. Jason? I really liked her relationship with Kia.
Yeah.
I think, if we were to revamp this in modern day, they should have been the end couple.
They had Kelly Rowland, who played Kia, and Monica Keena. They had very nice chemistry together.
Oh, fantastic. I love, I wish that Kia had survived the movie. Spoilers,
I loved Kia. She was probably... I love Laurie to death, but Kia's, up there with, my favorite human character from this movie.
For sure, and her death was bullshit too. We'll get into that later. But Laurie and Kia, they had this... I don't have a million sentences to say on this, but I will say that if you were looking for a touching human-to-human dynamic in this movie, it's their friendship. It's how they look out for each other, even though they butt heads, even though they disagree on a lot of shit, even though Kia frankly doubts Laurie on a lot of things, and understandably so. At the end of it, they stick together. At the end of it, they're tight with each other. They understand each other, and they make sure that the other girl is okay. Which, you go down swinging for somebody, and it doesn't mean nothing. Also, Kia fucking kicked ass, and just so you know, the whole thing with Kelly...
Oh god, this topic.
The whole thing with Kelly Rowland called Robert Englund a faggot was not scripted, if I remember correctly.
That was Robert's real reaction.
Yeah, it was Robert's actual reaction. And that's what makes the scene so fucking good. Is because at first I'm like, oh god, he just said something racist. And I'm like, oh no, she said something homophobic. It balances it out.
Here's the thing. I understand there are some people who find that very offensive. And I understand. But we're
I
very...
think it's so funny.
We're very vulgar people. So we were very tickled that
I think she's allowed.
Yeah.
She has a faggot pass.
As gay people, we are allowed to think it's funny when this character who was treated in a racist way flings some homophobia back. She's allowed to do that, in our opinion.
Listen, girl, I fucking get it. I understand.
He was acting like a faggot.
He was coming at it with the limp wrist and everything.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Sorry,
for the first time listeners, I'm sorry. We're like this. This is just our personalities.
Oh my god!
We don't mean any harm. We're just kind
Carling's allowed to say that because I said so.
I'm allowed to say it to Grendel. I wouldn't go. I'm not going to be slinging that at every gay man that I meet.
Slur discourse is fucking stupid anyway.
Oh god.
Okay. Anyway, fags aside. Kia, because we're on Kia now, right? Okay, sorry, I had fag brain for a second.
So does Freddy, constantly. Can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, well, we'll be talking about that, believe me. So Kia is a black character. Obviously, I'm not a black person. I don't have that much. Oh, dog, stop barking, fuck! Kia is a black character. I have a lot to say about her being painted as, like, this bad, mean person for insecurity that... an insecurity that many black women have that is ultimately a product of this very Eurocentric, beauty standard, normative society. Whatever, that's a collection of words that'll make sense in some arrangement.
She wanted a nose job, and and she should never have had to worry about it.
She's putting relaxers in her hair. She's straightening her hair, if that was her hair. If it was actually her real hair.
She's dyeing her hair red.
Yeah,
which is
there's just this negative manifestation of this, which is just largely beyond her control. She's trying to get rid of her black features. She's trying to get rid of her natural hair, the broadness of her nose, and shit like that. And I'm pretty sure the magazine she was flipping through, if I remember correctly, was even talking about, like, skin whitening techniques. And it's just like, dude, I don't understand why this movie had to go there and be like, oh yeah, she's a shallow, materialistic bitch who cares too much about her appearance for that. Because it's like, no, I think that that's a legitimate reality that a lot of people have to fucking go through when they're born with a certain set of features that aren't accepted as beautiful by these very white Western standards. It's like, that's not her fucking fault. A lot of black women go through that. It doesn't make her a bitch.
No, and a big problem with the movie, even though she was very likable and endearing, and I do think we were meant to like her, they tried to paint these things as like character flaws rather than something we should sympathize with her over. Like that I was talking about the novelization, and I'm going to say really quick before I forget, the one thing I think the novelization does that really pisses me off, Laurie is painted in a very good light. I'm going to be real, the book treats Kia in a very racist way, and I didn't condone that at all.
Because Laurie's the pretty innocent white girl, and Kia is obviously the mean materialistic black girl who's trying too hard to be white, and it's just like, man, no! Fuck no! No! And then the way that it kills her is fucking ridiculous. She finally stands up against somebody who's tossing some of that bullshit at her, and she gets fucking smacked around into a tree for it. It's like, that didn't That didn't have to happen.
Also, like, I understand, Jason is a very rough person. How would Jason know how to treat anything but, like, little animals gently? But, like, I don't think it was justified to have Jason, like, throw her the way that he did. Like, I feel like Jason might have shoved her out of the way, but I don't think he would have swung his fucking machete at her. People might argue, like, oh, he was offended that she was talking about his dick. I'm not saying Jason is stupid, but do you really think Jason, like, understood what she was even talking about?
Okay, to be fair, he does understand when people talk about his dick.
Okay, fair enough.
In Jason X, there are two people fucking next to his autopsy table on the spaceship, and one of them's like, I bet he's a fucking mammoth, and he gets so pissed off at that he wakes up from the dead and fucking kills her.
Okay, you know what? Relatable.
So, like, I understand that. I understand that argument. I don't necessarily even disagree with that argument, but I do think that, again, not from a character standpoint, they're fake, they're not real, I understand this. From a writing standpoint, kind of shitty. Pretty shitty. Actually really shitty. Everything about the way Kia was treated up to her death was pretty fucking shitty. Except for her friendship with Laurie, and even then, in novelizations, not painted very well. The contrast between those two.
I'm also gonna say really quick, because this gets me really heated. I mean, they handle his character a little bit better in the book, as they do for most of the human characters, but that little nerd Linderman, I don't remember the name of the actor who played him, I'm sorry. The fact that we're supposed to side with him when he's, like, ranting at Kia about what a bitch she is.
You're such a bitch because I hate women and I go on the brain cells
That's all I could hear when he talked. And then they're like,
oh no, it's romantic because he secretly has a crush on her, that's why he's a racist white boy. It's like, I don't fucking buy that shit for a second. Shut up. Shut the fuck up, Lindemann. You look like you need to be shoved into a fucking locker.
Seriously. I had no sympathy for him. I was rolling my fucking eyes at the end when they tried to give them, like, a tender moment. Like, I don't care. He's racist. He treated her like shit.
He's a piece of shit little white boy. Why the fuck do I care? Anyway.
Kia deserved better.
Kia deserved better. I did like, on a more tender note, back to Laurie for a second, I like that sort of eye contact that she made with Jason when he was, sinking, where it almost seemed like he was telling her that it was okay, and it almost seemed like she was understanding that he wouldn't be gone forever, because as he sunk, that was framed so what the fuck is that noise?
Oh, we have an old fridge. This house was made in, like, fucking 1978 or some shit. I'm surprised it's not haunted. Knock on wood.
Is the fridge made in fucking 1978?
I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if it was an ancient fridge. I wouldn't be surprised if something was, like, living in my fridge, honestly.
You got special little bits and bobbles and life forms and ecosystems developing in there.
I do!
Anyway, I like that peaceful moment between her and Jason. Because even the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comics, for as bad as they are, even they acknowledge that there was a special bond, and they bastardized this, but there was a special bond between Jason and Laurie. It wasn't just meant to be read as nothing. It wasn't just meant to be pretty, camera work. It was supposed to communicate that there was some kind of thing that developed between them where there was a friendship. There was a love there, in a way. And
as much as they could have had a love for each other in their circumstances.
Yeah. However cynically that this was later acknowledged and treated, Laurie was different because she tried to save Jason when nobody else would. And he recognized that, and he treated her differently because of that, which is very sweet. And it's a bond that Jason, as a character, has only gotten to have with Leatherface in another only semi-canonical to non-canonical thing in their crossover comics before. Whoa, that's a loud car. Though Jason and Laurie's friendship is not, like, nearly as romantically implicative as Jason and Bubba's interactions were. If you haven't read Jason versus Leatherface, that's a whole other fucking thing.
We could make a whole episode about that and about that relationship.
There's a rose involved. They're holding hands and shit. I mean, it's a whole thing.
We're not making it up. It really happened.
No, it happened. It was gay. Speaking of sexual tension between men, my favorite part of this movie, and our final point, if I'm not mistaken...
Yeah, because we might talk about this for a hot minute.
Oh, yeah. It was almost definitely the whole Freddy and Jason towing the line between fighting and fucking thing that was going on. Because everybody I've talked to who's watched this movie, especially gay people, they always seem to be like, yeah, that was a weird dynamic, wasn't it? Because it's just like... their dynamic was so fucking extremely sexually charged. And it fucking rules, man. Like, the jerk-off motion, the hip thrusting, the inherently penetrative nature of how Freddy invades Jason's deepest thoughts and fears. He sticks his fucking little knife in his head. I
wish they framed that better, but yeah, he does.
Yeah, I wish he wasn't a kid when he did that.
Yeah.
But it's good that they let us root for Jason by making Jason a more cohesive, rounded character. But even their final battle is shot, paced, and framed the way that sex scenes are, if that makes any sense. If you go back and watch it, that use of, like, the long camera shot, the slow pace, the very focused emphasis on things going in and out of bodies, there's just this splatter of fluid and the writhing against each other as they tear each other apart, the motive of fire on water standing as a representation of this very intimate, primitive struggle. It's really wet, it's really hot, it's really fucking hot, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I could cover with these two, because I really do love this relationship. It's probably one of my favorite dynamics in horror, period. The movie becomes really funny to me. I'm just going to start from the beginning. The movie becomes very funny to me when you realize Jason doesn't even understand who this man is or why he's mad at him. Their rivalry is actually quite one-sided in the beginning.
Jason's like, there's this fucking rat that keeps gnawing on the wires in my house and I don't know why.
Literally, like, Jason thinks that his fucking mother is talking to him and shit, because that's how Freddy starts interacting with him. He pretends to be Pamela Voorhees, and he's like, Jason, go kill these teenagers, Jason.
Careful, mommy.
Yeah, so Jason's like, alright, because that's what he's fucking used to. So he goes and he starts doing that because, you know, that's what he thinks he's supposed to be doing. And he's getting legitimately pissed at some of these kids because some of them are genuinely terrible people, like Gibbs' boyfriend. And, you know, Freddy's getting all mad behind the scenes, like, oh my god, he's taking my kills.
I love that Freddy orchestrates this fucking problem, makes the problem for himself, and then he's like, clearly this is Jason's fault.
Literally, and Jason doesn't even know who he is. Like,
Jason's fucking confused. He just woke up from a fucking coma, man.
Literally, I remember, like, the scene where, like, they first officially meet each other in Freddy's boiler room. Like, I remember, I'm trying to remember how... Okay, I believe Jason got knocked out because Freddy possessed someone and knocked him out. It's been a minute since I watched the movie. And Jason, you know, but Jason's being given these commands, like, oh, go here and do this, go do that, and shit like that. And all of a sudden, this burnt little man is, like, sidling up to him and saying shit like, oh, you've been a thorn in my side for too long, or whatever it was he was saying to him.
You're like a stupid dog. It's like, wait, dude.
Yeah, it was very, like, very sexualized comments towards him.
It was really like leather daddy at a BDSM bar comments, and it was just fucking, it was so uncool.
Yeah, God, we have a fucking character. We like a lot of bastards who talk to other people that way, don't we?
Like, just to be clear, I love Freddy Krueger. I think he's a horrible little man, but he's my human pet.
Yes. And God, it's like, Freddy's, like, coming up to him and, like, basically, he's basically, if I were Jason, I would be looking at Freddy and I'd be thinking to myself, you are making sounds. These aren't words to me. Like, I don't understand who you are. I don't understand why you're so angry. And I think an important thing to acknowledge is that Jason, he was trying to understand what was going on. Freddy struck first, and then Jason had to start defending himself, because what else was he supposed to do?
It's like picking up a hamster that wants to be pet, and then it just starts biting the shit out of you. Like, okay, then what the fuck? But yeah, I mean, I don't have like the most. I don't have the most intricate commentary to make on this. All I have to really say is go back and watch their fight scenes. Because it's not subtle, dude. It's just not. The fucking, you know, he's looking at him and he's going, with his hand. And I'm like, okay, well, you want to jerk him off. We get it. We understand.
Can we also talk about the scene where, like, Freddy, like, swings his leg up and he kicks Jason in the balls and it makes, like, a clang sound?
Jason's fucking iron nuts.
Oh my god.
I like it. Didn't he hit him in the nuts and then it hurt him?
Yeah, and then he was like, oh! Jason didn't even react.
Fucking character development. I remember in part 2, Jason got hit in the balls and fucking crumpled.
Yeah, it doesn't affect him anymore. I'm thinking of, like, because I know back when we first watched it, I had a lot to say about them, so I'm just trying to, like, remember, like, old conversations between us. Do you have anything to say? Because I don't want to be sitting here in silence, because I know myself.
Dude, no, I'm fucking, like, pulling out my eyebrow hairs and staring at them right now. Yeah, you like that? You like that shit? You like that?
That's delicious.
You want to eat one of those?
No, I really don't.
You want a little snack?
No, no, I want to talk to... No.
Baby want jelly?
No.
Baby need jelly?
Hey, monkey want a cookie?
Monkey want the cookie?
Monkey want a cookie?
Okay, sorry. We're having a Spawn moment. There was a whole thing in the Spawn issue.
That's an inside joke between us now.
Yeah, there's a whole thing in the Spawn issue where Violator has his resident bottom next to him, and he's like, yeah, you're a good little monkey, aren't you? Monkey want a fucking cookie? And Wynn's like, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I want to compare the relationship to Freddy and Jason's, but, like, Jason's not as much of a bitch.
No, Jason's more of a top.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway here, is that Jason Voorhees is a top. That's the whole point of Freddy
Freddy's a
Jason.
bottom little bitch.
Yeah, that's the whole point of Freddy versus Jason, actually, was just to tell us that.
Yeah, and we could read it as, like, some kind of, like, sexual awakening for both characters or some shit.
What if it was? What if it was just, like, a big metaphor for Jason finally going through puberty and realizing he's gay?
I could absolutely see the movie being read that way, yeah. And
I think there's an actual analysis to be done there that I don't want to make right now, but I think that's a whole thing.
It's a fucking thesis paper you could hypothetically write. And I had another point about Freddy.
Queerness and womanism and Freddy versus Jason.
I mean, you could write it if you really wanted to.
You could. Wasn't that 2003?
That was 2003, that movie. Oh my... How the fuck is this movie almost 18 years old? This movie's almost 20 years old.
I don't know what month that came out, but I was either 3 or 4.
Oh my god, I would have been 7 or 8 when that came out. I know!
Ew.
I know,
old! Ew.
I'm older than I look!
Ew!
I swear to god I had another point about these two characters. Oh, I think I remember what it is. Really, if I'm allowed to be very gay for a second here, because unless they make more movies in the series, you know, poor Jason is like has been trapped in a fucking court battle for years, but, you know, depending on what happens to the Nightmare on Elm Street canon, and depending on what happens to the Friday the 13th canon, and whether or not they're rebooted when we do, hopefully eventually get more of those movies, we don't know what happened between Freddy and Jason after the credits rolled, because it's heavily implied like they're still going to be around each other and fighting each other and shit. We don't know where that went.
Fucking robot chicken sequence of them like getting married and going on honeymoon and shit. I feel like somebody's done that. But, I mean, that's all I have to say about this movie, is that it's gay and it could have treated its women better.
Yeah, I feel bad because I swear to god I had, like, a whole, like, speech planned about Freddy and Jason, but I feel like a lot of that is, like, interpretive, and we mostly just wanted to talk about the text of the movie.
And we'll talk more about it probably if and when we ever cover, because we want to, New Nightmare. If we're gonna cap off our Nightmare on Elm Street talk, I think we should end it with that, because New Nightmare is a fucking masterpiece.
Oh, I love that movie.
It's one of those, like, again, semi-canonical things like Freddy vs. Jason is, where we kind of wanted to save it until after we talked about the main stuff.
I'm gonna miss talking about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, we ain't never gonna go through 4 and 5, though.
No. I mean, we already did as much as we could for those movies anyway.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about those. The only additional thing that I have to say about Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5 is that I know somebody personally who has a really weird fetish for being transformed into a cockroach and tortured because of that one scene where the Debbie girl gets transformed into a cockroach and then squished.
Oh, I do have one final thought for now, and I could technically say this for New Nightmare, but I'm gonna say it now.
Say it.
Yeah, Robert, as many issues as I had with some of Freddy's characterization in this movie, Robert, I think this is one of Robert's best performances as Freddy Krueger in Freddy vs. Jason.
Ken did a fantastic job as Jason, too. I know that Kane wishes that he had been in that movie and that he would have done a lot of things differently, but... You know, Ken Kersinger is a phenomenal Jason in and of himself, and I really hope that Kane Hodder does not hold any animosity towards him, which I don't think he does. I think they like each other fine, but, you know, I just... Ken, you're so tall and big, and I remember
He's Canadian too.
Yeah, I remember even Robert Englund was like, I have a hot, hard Canadian man drinking me under the table outside of the recording time, and I'm like, hello?
The filming of this movie sounded like it was so much fun. Just based
I wanted to hang out with them. I want to go to a bar with these guys and just see what they have to say.
Yeah, and I will say, just on the topic of Robert and his very phenomenal acting, in my opinion, it really... Okay, this is more of an opinion thing. Do you think this was a good curtain call for Freddy, or do you think Robert should have had one more movie after this?
Okay, well, if you're asking me that, I'm always going to be biased, and I'm always going to say that, Robert Englund should have been in another Freddy movie, because I would have loved another one.
At least one or two more.
The Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash treatment was actually promising. Not the comics, but the treatment for the actual film. I met the artist who did the perspective art for that, by the way. He's a real asshole.
Really?
He was at Collective Con, and which I went to in Jacksonville the other weekend. Fucking dick, dude. I didn't like that guy.
Oh my god.
Really, really kind of a fucking dick. But, I'm not gonna name drop. You can look him up if you want. But, yeah, so, whatever. I wanted to buy the print, and he was just so fucking mean about it. I'm like, oh shit, I'll fucking leave.
Yeah, go lose your fucking business then if you're gonna be a dick.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, I'm not gonna buy your fucking shit now. But, yeah, so, anyway, I think that treatment would have been a promising send-off for him, it would have made more sense, too.
Yeah, but Freddy was, like, dead at the end of that treatment. He was not gonna come back. Which is kind of... shit. He was kind of sad, but it would have been nice to get, like, a definitive end for Robert's Freddy, I think.
Yeah, I would have liked that as the ending better, but as an ending, Freddy vs. Jason isn't that bad.
I think, I do kind of, I will say Freddy vs. Jason is fun. The open-endedness of it is nice. Like, you kind of get the impression this isn't the end of their rivalry. This is the start of something that's going to go on for a long, long time, and we don't necessarily have to see it.
And you know what? I love Robert Englund as Freddy, but even just on YouTube, I've seen a lot of people who play phenomenal Freddy Kruegers, who I would love to see in a professional role as Freddy Krueger. So it's not like the rivalry cannot be continued with the talent that is out there. There are plenty of people that can play Jason, and there are actually plenty of people that can play Freddy.
Oh yeah, you just gotta find the right guy, and they're out there. People need to stop fixating on celebrities and look at fans who've like studied this character for years and years.
Fans who love them and have put a lot of effort into perfecting their characterization and their costuming. I mean, those people deserve a lot more respect than they're given.
Honestly, sometimes I think I've joked around with you that you have acting experience and you can do this thing with your face and you can make your eyes go dead and shit. Maybe we should have you in a Freddy short film or something.
I would love that. I would love to play Freddy. I have the appropriately pale skin and red hair for it.
Yeah, exactly. And you have the glove.
Yeah,
I think it's on. I think you put it on our Instagram.
I did. I should do more photo shoots with that thing.
Please. Oh my god. We were supposed to go to what was it? It was this convention in Orlando. We were supposed to go together either last spring or last summer.
We might go next fall. We might be there together next fall at an LGBTerror panel. If anything, I will be there.
Yeah, it really depends for me, like, what the COVID situation is. Is it really bad? Am I going to be vaccinated? Will I be able to, like, get on the plane and afford my tickets and shit? We'll see. It's a ways away. We'll figure it out. We'll keep you guys posted on that. I have a couple different cosplays that I'm hoping to do. Like, I'm
gonna be chilling in that booth as Jeepers Creepers man for sure.
I am considering either Art the Clown, or he's not necessarily horror, but I do really like him. I might do Violator from Spawn, maybe.
What do you mean he's not horror? Have you fucking read Spawn?
We've been reading. This is what we've been doing in our downtime lately. We've been reading Spawn together. So
a lot of it. Yeah, I just blew through about 100 issues last night.
Oh my god! I was on. Okay, guys, I was on issue fucking 41, and this man, somehow he ended up on issue 127 in a day.
I'm done at 135.
Okay,
I think.
I know.
Or 139. I'm not quite sure. I know I'm at 140. Almost.
Oh, I got to spend a day just catching up.
Dude, trust me, there's 60 issues that aren't worth it.
You might need to tell me what arcs aren't worth it.
Okay, so when Sam and Twitch and Angela are gone, just skip to 119.
Yeah.
That's about all I can tell you.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who are like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? We're gonna do some episodes on it eventually. I will say now, if you're interested in like fucking dark fantasy and like horror and like anti-heroes and shit, you're probably going to enjoy it. They're available to read online.
If you liked Freddy vs. Jason, you'll probably like Spawn.
Yeah, honestly, like, there's a lot of homoerotic, like, rivalries and shit in that series.
Spawn is probably the most bisexual piece of media I've ever read in my life.
Literally. And if you like Freddy Krueger, you're probably gonna like Violator. Honestly, the shitty little clown guy.
Yeah,
Great
the shitty little homosexual clown.
Yes. Do we have anything else we want to add besides talking about what we've been up to lately?
Motherfucker, no. I don't know shit. I don't fucking talk about anything. If I'm not on this podcast, I don't say shit.
I mean, we talk a lot.
Yeah, we do. You're the only person I talk to.
Yeah, we're both pretty antisocial people. Like, I have like a couple people that I talk to and like Ren, and that's about it.
Oh man. Yeah, well, speaking of talking, I think we should probably stop here.
Yeah, because we're gonna start going on about nothing. We ain't talking about Freddy vs. Jason anymore. We're just talking about us.
Freddy vs. Jason topic ended about 10 minutes ago. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. What do you want to say?
Oh, all I was gonna say is we've said our piece, but as is true for any topics we discuss on our podcast, if you guys have any opinions on Freddy vs. Jason, if you have questions for us about certain things in the movie about those characters, just drop us a line and we'll be happy to talk more about it.
Hit us up, it's always cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about it. I'm done. I've exhausted myself.
Me too. It's been an hour. We're good.
I'm gonna go cut this audio up and upload it. And if you feel like dropping us a like or a comment or subscribing or whatever you're listening on, I don't fucking know what the system on Spotify is. Do that. Bye.
Yeah, we'll be back soon. Hopefully.
Yep. When we say that, it's gonna take 3 months.
We'll be back when we're back.
We'll be back when we're back. Bye bye.
See ya.
All right.
And I'm done recording.